Omagyan Tamaran Dasha Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramanitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminipta Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Purvale Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So text 46 for chapter 6. Tapasvi Bhyo Tiko Yogi Janni Bhyo Pi Mato Tika Karvi Vyas Shiji Kod Yogi Tasmad Yogi Bhavarjuna. A yogi is greater than an ascetic, greater than an empiricist, greater than a fruitive worker. Therefore, Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Go back to C. Oh, okay, because we're in Dhyana Yoga, so the ascetic and the empiricist. Purport: when we speak of yoga, refer to linking our consciousness with the supreme absolute truth. Such a process is named differently by various practitioners in terms of the particular method adopted. When the linking process is predominantly in fruitive activities, it is called karma yoga. When it is predominantly empirical, it is called jnana yoga. And when it is predominantly in devotional relationship with Krishna, it is called bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness, is the ultimate perfection of all yogas, as will be explained in the next verse. The Lord has confirmed herein the superiority of yoga. He has not mentioned that it is better than bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is full spiritual knowledge, and therefore nothing can excel it. Asceticism without self-knowledge is imperfect. Imperfect knowledge without empiric knowledge without surrender to the Supreme is also imperfect. And further work without Krishna consciousness, it's a waste of time. Therefore, the most highly praised form of yoga performance mentioned herein is bhakti yoga. And this is still more clearly explained in the next verse. So, any reflections from our esteemed group? I hope everybody was able to read along. You have your Bhagavad Gitas. Nantesh, for some reason, it says you're the speaker. Oh, gallery. Okay, now I got it. Something?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Yes, the Gayatri.
Yes. I have a question. In the line where it said, when it is predominantly empirical, it is called Jnana Yoga. Well, as I understand, empirical more refer to experience, is it? The experience, guided by experience. And then how is it related to Jnana Yoga? Jnana Yoga is more the spiritual knowledge and then some mental speculation like that. This is what I understand.
Okay, say, Siri, what does empirical mean? Hey, Siri, what does empirical mean?
Empirical means based on...
Whoop, I touched it. Hey, Siri, what does empirical mean? Based on...
Empirical means based on, concerned with, or verifiable by observation or experience, rather than theory or pure logic.
So it's verifiable, and then something verifiable. Predominantly empirical is called Jnana Yoga. I wanted to see what that really meant. We always consider empirical knowledge to be that Jnanis are searching. Jnanis are searching for something philosophical, like research, philosophical research to find a connection to the absolute truth. So various practitioners in turn are trying to find that when it's predominantly empirical, it's called Jnana Yoga. So jnana yoga, jnana means knowledge, yoga means connecting our knowledge. And so they're trying to connect the two together. So I'm not quite sure, I can't quite remember your question, how that was connected. Did you have did you have the right understanding of the word empirical?
Yeah. As I understand, it is more guided by experience,
Yes.
rather than theological knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But from what you get from the dictionary, it also refers to knowledge that can be verified. So
Yeah,
maybe in this sense, they are related.
verified.
Yeah.
I saw something, because sometimes I read these or watch these different philosophers, and there was one person was arguing that if you can't verify something, how can you accept it as absolute? And Nitrikashori, nice to see you. And from Farazan too, nice. So there was a thing where he was trying to explain that if by his empiric, in other words, by his own observance, he can't see it, or he can't experience it, then he doesn't really accept it as absolute. But in the Krishna consciousness, we also accept hearing as experiential. And I've given this example, I think, to this group several times. Just like if you're going to touch something and I say, oh, that's hot. Just by hearing, you'll know that it's hot. Now, if I say that water is not clean, then you won't drink that water just by hearing. You don't have to take it to a lab and have it analyzed and stuff like that. So hearing is also a process of understanding and experience. So that's what the Bhagavatam brings out in the first canto, how hearing from the absolute, from the proper authority, then it's meant to be accepted. The example that's given is that if you want to know who your father is, there's one source of information, one person that can tell you, and that's your mother. Your mother can tell you who your father is. You don't have to go all over the globe. Are you my father? Are you my father? Are you my father? I can see Prabhupada doing that because I hear him do that in the lecture. Are you my father? You my father? You my father? You my father? You can go over to the 3 billion, whatever it is, male species, and ask if you're their father. But if you really want to understand, you go to the proper source. And therefore, Vedas are considered to be knowledge, and Veda is considered to be like our mother. In other words, that it can give us that type of knowledge which is beyond our ability to experience. And so Prabhupada is explaining here that this predominantly empirical or experiential is called Jnana Yoga. And then when he goes down, that it says empirical knowledge without surrender to the Supreme Lord is also imperfect. In other words, if we don't surrender ourselves through this study on an empirical level, just like I've mentioned this many times, that in the introduction to the Gita, it says that as you read the Gita, one should at least theoretically, which is what being described here, theoretically accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is actually speaking for our benefit, for us to understand this message that he's trying to deliver. If we think that Krishna is an ordinary conditioned soul with all the different defects that we have, then that knowledge will not be perfect. But because we say that Krishna is above these imperfections, therefore the knowledge that he can give is also perfect. And so that empiric knowledge without surrender, because it's very difficult, with this empirical knowledge, very difficult to really say, okay, I surrender. Very difficult to say I surrender, because you're not able to 100% identify that which is beyond our ability to experience. So that's just a short, brief little thing. Oh, missed call from Brahmatirtha. I have my phone.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Yeah.
Sure. That was a simple attempt. I tried. Somebody else have something? Oh, I kept smelling camphor. Kept smelling. Where's this camphor coming from? I just put tilak on. And the tilak has camphor. I was just about ready. I was starting to think, what's going on in the house here? Some other question from our points that you'd like to bring out from this 46th verse? Or we can go to 47. If somebody doesn't have, 47 has a very long purport.
That's the last verse.
Yeah, that's the last one.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've been on this chapter for the whole, we could call this the COVID chapter at this point.
Yeah.
Should we move on to 47?
Yes, Maharaj.
Democratic system. So this is text 47. We can connect it if something comes up. We can connect it to 46 if we need be. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatir nin tar atmana shrivan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo manaha mata. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who abides in me, thinks of me within himself, renders transcendental loving service to me. He is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That's my opinion.
Excuse me, Maharaj.
Yes.
We can ask someone to read.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Smita reads so well. I was just gonna ask Smita to read the first paragraph or so.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, because I wanted to see if you would do the verse. I wanted to see if you would chant the Sanskrit verse in the middle of this time, if you would shy out. Somebody said, "Oh, Smita chants this verse so nicely." They mentioned that to me when I was talking to somebody last week or so.
Oh, thank you. The word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its roots in the word bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore or to show respect and honor to the worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can avoid worshipping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous, but one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Failing to do this, he falls down. The Bhagavatam confirms this as follows. Ya isham purusham sakshad atma prabhavam ishwaram na bhajanti avajananti sthanad bhrashta patanti adha. Anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primordial Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position.
So some reflections from that. Anybody? A lot of things stood out. And anything stand out for you? So I can see everybody. Oops. How come I can't get into a gallery? Oh, because you got the book. Some takeaways, some reflections. I like how, go ahead. Who's
I'll
speaking?
speak, Maharaj. It's just something simple it's like very profound though, is the word worship when there's need of service. I mean, it just sounds so contrite, with boundaries like need of service. You need to contribute. You need to serve. You need to volunteer. But this is so different.
You're saying in the word bhajate, which has its word, the word braj, which is used where there is need of service.
Right.
That's where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you saying?
No, well, I'm saying the difference between the word worship and bhajate.
Yeah.
It's subtle but very profound, the difference. Worship worship is like almost like an obligation, and this is where the dividing line is where you're you realize, you understand that you're connected with the Supreme. You're not separate from the Supreme. It's not really the same as an obligation. It's your you're intended to serve. It's just a little bit different, but it's very profound.
Yeah, especially how Prabhupada says worship means to adore,
Mm-hmm.
or
Right.
to show respect and honor to a worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Lord. And one can avoid worshiping a respectable man or demigod, may be called discourteous, but one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. In other words, that's our relationship with Krishna, which is one of the things I found in the last part of the paragraph. It's very, 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 very subtle.
Right, it's subtle, but
Very
very
subtle
profound.
that you caught that in that. Very nice.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Lavanga's got her 2 fingers up. She maybe has 2 points.
Yeah, well, it's like in need of service as opposed to worship. Bhaj is a lot more personal. Worship is more like awe and reverence, a little farther away. But like when you serve someone, it's there's more of a give and take feeling. It's more personal.
Yeah, like Prabhupada said, but service with love and faith.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is Bhaj.
Yes.
Yeah, as opposed to worship, which is more awe and reverence.
To adore. Honor.
Yeah.
Somebody else?
Maharaj, typically in India, where people, they get confused between the demigods and Krishna. So it is said that the worship can be towards the demigods, but worship cannot be towards Krishna. For Krishna, it has to come from within the heart, and therefore it's called bhajan or bhaj. It comes from the bhajan word, Sanskrit term. And since like worship is more kind of commanding kind of thing, people when they worship the
Your microphone stopped.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
So generally when people worship the demigods and the demigoddesses, they have to be very particular, because if in the worship anything goes wrong, they have to pay the price for that, because the demigod doesn't like that. On the other hand, when it comes to Krishna, since it is completely out of love, Krishna doesn't mind squeezing out the sweet rice from the mouth of Madhumangal.
Yeah. He ate the banana peel one time.
Yeah.
Because it was offered with love.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, especially in demigod worship without the pandits, they're definitely going to find some fault and definitely give you a fine. And they're definitely going to be there. Did I just notice that anybody else have something they like to bring up from here?
Vrajabhumi Mataji.
Vrajabhumi, pages. Oh, there
I
her
have
hand.
something.
Yeah, and Vrajabhumi had to hand up first. So let's do Vrajabhumi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. One thing that kind of stood up for me, that worshiping Krishna is unavoidable because he resides within our heart. And when you do try to avoid it, you fall down. That's what's standing up for me, because we are, every living entity is intended to serve the Lord, and it's unavoidable because he resides within our heart. That's what stood up for me.
Yeah, it says one cannot avoid serving Krishna without being condemned. In other words, if we're not connected to Krishna, then we have to take repeated birth and death. I think was it Bren? I didn't.
Yes.
Yeah, Bren was next, then Rishi Rupa Manjari.
Evening, Maharaj.
Evening.
So actually, I think it's fairly consistent with what has been said. But if we chant the Maha Mantra, then our heart becomes full of love. It's then very, very difficult, I would imagine near impossible, to go before the deities themselves and then to actually worship, because it's two completely different things. It comes from a completely different place. So if it comes from a place of love and devotion and commitment, then it's elevated. And so it isn't work. And it's really interesting because in the Jewish religion, one of the terms that's used in terms of prayer is avodah, the Hebrew word, which actually means work. And that is so, and the idea of that is that we should work to improve ourselves, at least in terms of the Jewish, the Jewish idea. But here it's totally different. We have a partner in Krishna. And I think it's so much, and I think that's it, because he dwells within us. It shouldn't be work. It should be out of love.
Nice. Yeah.
And the other thing, by the way, and one other thing that's so interesting.
That's the fine connection with bhakti. That's the fine connection that you get with bhakti.
It's true, and if you speak to a Nandan company, they'll say that ISKCON is part of a philosophy, but the word philosophy comes from, I think it's the Latin philos, which means love. So even literally the philosophy of a philosophy by His Divine Grace, Prabhupada, is that of love. It is the connective tissue of the Hare Krishna movement.
Nice. Thank you. Sri Rupa Manjari.
I was listening to a class by Tamal Krishnaraj this afternoon, and this kind of connects for me because he was speaking about how when somebody say they're sitting in their office and they're working, like how are they doing devotional service? How are they connected? And somebody in the audience was speaking about how, they're earning money, maybe they're providing for their family, to raise a Krishna conscious family. And then Tamal Krishnaraj was saying that no matter where you are, you're in Krishna's kingdom, right? It doesn't have to be that you're in front of the, in front of the deities in the temple. It could be
right.
where you are, you're doing your service and your duty. So I thought that kind of connected.
Very nice. I can still hear everybody, but if somebody's knocking on my door to bring me some fresh ahimsa cow milk.
Yes, Maharaj. I just wanted to point out one thing that really caught my eye on this purport was that the part on where Prabhupada says that every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Is this the same thing as basically like it said, we have our own ways of serving like Krishna, no matter whichever position we're in?
You're talking about Varna and Ashram?
Right. I mean,
Yes.
But it said by his own constitution. So it's for me, I was thinking so if I was a flower and I was to offer and I was to be offered to Krishna, then in that same way I would be I guess liberated.
Yes, in one sense. It kind of connects to what Sri Rupa Manjari was saying. And this was one of the things that the last part of the purport, which I caught, because every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of God, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. So you can take that own constitution because it's using the word constitution, I'm thinking in terms of Varna and Ashram, which comes in the 40th verse of this 18th chapter, where Krishna begins to describe Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and then 2 or 3 verses later, he explains that each and every one of them can attain the supreme by doing their nature, or working in their nature and doing it to serve Krishna. In other words, if one's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra by nature, and they utilize that to serve Krishna, then they can achieve perfection. And so also you could even stretch it a little bit. I don't know, because I think that's the way it is, because it says failing to do this, he falls down. So that would take it away from our sarup, our siddhasrup, our spiritual position. I may be a flower in the spiritual world. I may be a tree. I may be a cowherd boy. I may be a whatever it may be. That's also our position. We all have that eternal position in relationship to Krishna, to serve Krishna. But here, because it's saying that every living entity is intended to serve Krishna, the Supreme Lord, by his own constitution, and to not do that, one will fall down. So I guess you could take it to the spiritual world. If you're not serving Krishna according to your relation to Krishna in the spiritual world, and you think you should be the big boss, then you have to get a temporary leave of absence. What do they call that? They call that like sometimes companies will do that. They don't fire you. They just say, okay, you come back in 6 months. Furlough. They call it furlough. I think furlough. They furlough you. They don't want to fire you because they don't want to lay you off, because then you'll affect their unemployment insurance. So then they always know how to win. They definitely know how to win. So this is confirmed in the 11th canto, 5th chapter. I can't remember the name of the chapter, which was very nicely sung by Smita. I have to admit, Smita, you did very nice with the verse. And anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. So therefore, that kind of confirms it. Either be it our material constitutional position or our spiritual constitutional position is going to be challenged by that. It's going to definitely be challenged by that. Any other reflections or takeaways or anything from this first paragraph? This last verse may take a couple of days, a couple of Tuesdays. Jai Shri Radhe, I'm calling you. If there's any takeaways, Jai Shri Radhe, I see you're in Hawaii again. Uh-oh, how come it's not working? Your voice isn't working.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
That's why. That makes sense. Okay. It doesn't work when it's hooked up to a speaker, even though the speaker has a mic. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I had tried talking earlier, and then it was like I just got talked over, and I was like, okay, well, I guess it's not my turn to speak. So I was thinking it's interesting, like the synergy of today, or the second verse, because today's Srimad Bhagavatam class, which I got to give the first time in a long time today, was really.
I got a good report from your class.
And it was a little intimidating because half the class was Prabhupada disciples, and I'm like, why am I speaking?
Yeah.
But anyway, the verse was on this, transcendental love for Krishna, and I was thinking, oh, that's synergistic, and then I thought, well, obviously it's synergistic because all the verses are about loving Krishna. Like that's the essence of every verse. But the things that really stood out to me in today's class, as well as right now, is every time in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna actually addresses Arjuna, like he did in the previous verse, he says, be a yogi, like he's giving him direct instructions. Whereas most of the verses are like, one who does this will come to me. But there are a few times in the Bhagavad Gita where he directly instructs Arjuna. And I find those verses to be very sweet and intimate. It almost sounds like he's speaking to all of us. And that's when you really feel that love and devotion and intimacy, because through Arjuna, he's talking to all of us, like, be a yogi, always think of me. Like he's giving him direct direction, like direct instructions. Whereas in this verse, he goes back to, one who thinks of me will come to me, right? And so it then kind of, there's a step back a little bit. And then I think the difference between like worship and love and respect, and I like the distinction that there's that on reverence with worship, but with service with love, it's just all about faith. Because that's what it really just comes down to. Like on some level, worship is asking for something. There's some kind of like transaction that's happening there, whereas love and service, it's just pure. There's no,
they call it selfless, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so there's no like business transaction, like I'll do this for you and then you do this for me. That's what I was thinking of when we read the verses.
Yeah. Another thing is, this is one of the verses where Krishna says, that is my opinion. It's only like several places in the Gita where he says that, even though it is his opinion all the way through, he emphasizes his opinion here. So we have any volunteers to read the next paragraph? Going once, going twice.
I can read, Maharaj.
Okay. Get our school teachers engaged here.
In this verse, also the word bhajanti is used. Therefore, bhajanti is applicable to the Supreme Lord only, whereas the word worship can be applied to demigods or to any other common living entity. The word avajananti used in this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is also found in the Bhagavad Gita, avajananti man muraha. Only the fools and rascals derive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita with an attitude of service to the Lord. Consequently, they cannot properly distinguish between the word bhajanti and the word worship.
Should we open that up or should we read the next paragraph? Anybody have anything?
I need to digest.
It's just like what they were saying, that they worship the demigods. Demigod worship is definitely bribing. Just like in India, you have to give a bribe. I was just talking today when two Gurukul boys were in India with one senior Prabhupada disciple with metal detectors in Rajasthan, and they got caught by the police. And even if it's not technically against the law, they can make anything against the law. And I guess they were saying you're trying to find artifacts or something. And the Prabhupada disciple was determined not to give him a bribe to get out of jail. He was just determined not to give a bribe. And the boys were saying, just bribe him, because they were Gurukulis. They knew what they had to do. They grew up in the Gurukul in India. They knew you just bribe them. And anyway, they got out of jail finally. But the point is that bribing the demigods to get a nice husband, bribing the demigods to get a nice wife, bribing the demigods to get good children, bribing the demigods to have good health, bribing the demigods, so many different things. It starts at a high level. And that worship is done for that particular purpose. It's purposeful worship. And we're doing this to get this, as Ananteshwar was saying earlier, basically saying, if I'll give you this 10 rupees if you give me, one good son, and I'll give you 25 rupees if you make him healthy, and I'll give you whatever. I don't know exactly how they do it, but there's a system for worshiping. What do they call punch? What do they call those 5 deities? The pancha. Oh, no, the word. Anyway, they worship 5 major demigods, and they want to get a particular result from them. Even in one of the verses purports, Prabhupada said, if you want to get your health strong, you worship the sun. You worship the sun god. And it's interesting. In order to worship the sun, you have to worship him with fire, because everything else is impure compared to fire. Something, anybody have any more takeaway? How you like the idea, only fools and rascals? That's my favorite type of preaching. Only fools and rascals deride the Supreme Personality of God and Lord Krishna. Might be some of the devotees here in Dallas remember when Gary Raj Swami gave class and he said, I'll let Prabhupada call them fools and rascals. I'll let Prabhupada do that part, and I'll just take it easy on him, let Prabhupada hammer him, and I'll just try to be nice. But definitely fools and rascals, abhajananti mam mudha, foolish people who are devoid of intelligence, deride the Supreme Lord. They just the Supreme Lord Krishna. It's interesting how Prabhupada said that even though they're deriding Krishna, such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, which is spoken by Krishna. First, they deride somebody. They won't acknowledge their transcendental position, and at the same time, they utilize that which they say to write commentaries, and therefore they can't distinguish Krishna as a supreme entity compared to any other living entity. The demigods are individual spirit souls like all of us here. We're all individual spirit souls. They've just taken birth in demigod bodies. We've taken birth in human bodies. Trees take birth in trees bodies like that. And so because of that deriding, or kind of an offensive nature, I guess you could call it, offensive nature, not accepting Krishna, then they won't get that understanding. It's just like if Prabhupada gives an example in one lecture I heard, and he says, if you approach somebody and say you don't exist, what kind of relationship are you going to have with that person? It's like if I were to say, Nanette, you don't exist. How are you? Please give me this. You don't exist. I'd really like some visualization therapy, but you don't actually exist. What's my chances of you having any inclination? You may, because I know, because you know me, and I know I exist. I know that I know that you exist. Well, that was a hard one. And so the idea is to disrespect someone and then ask, and then try to have, receive that knowledge. Very, very, very unusual situation. To me, it just seems very unusual that first you deride the Supreme Lord, and then you think that you can write commentaries on what he says. In other words, you have a little bit. You want to utilize him. I probably would say they deride Krishna, but they make a good business out of quoting their verses, but they misquote. They don't quote distinctly. They misquote Prabhupada. They misquote Krishna. Sometimes we misquote Prabhupada too. Or we quote Prabhupada when he's quoting something for a particular time, place, and circumstance, and we make it a blanket, what would you say, instruction. Some instructions are meant for time for a particular person at a particular time in a particular place. We got 12 minutes. It's a long paragraph. Any other takeaways or comments for this one?
I think you don't real. I mean, they speak a lot in the literature about these people with different names that do this sort of thing. And I mean, as we speak about this and read about this tonight, I'm thinking, you know, we really don't understand the effects of the offenses on all these levels.
Mm.
You know, because you just spoke about offenses on 3 levels and how you can really create a contortion and distortion by, you know, intellectualizing the pure Vedas.
Mm.
And I mean, you know, we only hear it, but like as you speak about it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, this is really many levels of offense and really abuse to the pure Vedas. It's not just one level.
Mm. Who was I on Tamal Krishnamurti's disappearance day, I listened to the morning class here, and then I watched probably 5 hours of YouTube videos of him talking and stuff like that. But I can't remember it was him because I watched Burijan too, and then I all of a sudden I got into like a 3-day marathon. Anyway, that's another thing. But Prabhupada did this thing where the Sikh, and they have the big chair for the Grantha. What is that? Where the speaker, what do they call it? Grantha. And the Sikh, I'm talking to you on Nanteshwar because you're in the Grantha. What do they call it?
They call it Granth Sahib.
Yeah.
Granth Sahib.
So the devotees convinced them to let Prabhupada sit on that big vyasa, the big chair. And then there was an impersonalist, and they thought, and though they brought Prabhupada spoke first, and they brought him over, and Prabhupada just sat there like you know, I'm not moving, you know, and I'm not going to let some impersonalist come in here and just like have a big seat, you know, just like. You know, and so they finally let him sit down and speak, and then Prabhupada was just chanting japa the whole time. And so all the devotees, there was like a dozen, half dozen devotees, and they were just sitting there. They did, whatever Prabhupada did, they did. It's like when like Prabhupada taught us everything in India because we were the dancing white elephants. I say we, I mean Hare Krishnas. I wasn't there. We were the dancing white elephants. And so when they would go to like home programs, and probably would take one piece of bitter melon, the devotees would all take a piece of bitter melon. If he took a piece of cauliflower, they'd all take a piece of cauliflower. They just did whatever Prabhupada did, right? And so when Prabhupada just started chanting, when the impersonalist person was expounding impersonal philosophy, Prabhupada just chanted. And then it went on. It was in Hindi, so this went on, and devotees had no idea what was going on, just chanting. And then Prabhupada said, "Stop them. You know, stop him." And so all the devotees, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what he said. They're just looking at Prabhupada, and they go, "What?" He goes, "Do kirtan." So they just did kirtan, and then they got back. And because they still didn't know what was going on, so they asked Prabhupada, "What happened? You know, you were chanting for this whole time, and we just chanted with you. Why did all of a sudden you say that?" Because he said, first he was talking about, you know, material nature, and then he was talking about the modes of material nature, and he's talking about the living entities, and then he was talking about the supreme Lord, and then he was, and above that. Then he said, "I had to put my fist down." something higher than loving. I had to put my, I could, at that point, I couldn't take it. So they said, at first it was okay. You know, I could tolerate, but at that one point where he said there's something higher than Krishna, then I had to put my, I had to put my foot down, because they don't understand, because see, that's what happens when one's mentality becomes polluted by just not proper understanding of what is it, like Panipashena Seva, submissive inquiry and service. That's meant, we do that to Guru, but that is meant to be training so that we have that submissive service attitude to Krishna. And so when we have that submissive service attitude to Krishna, then Krishna reveals everything to us. And so because they don't have that, they want to have a challenging, and then therefore that information is not revealed. So they can't understand beyond that. They can't understand that conception. That's only given. Just like we know that bhakti, we know that bhakti is, there's a way of saying it's the currency that purchases Krishna. In other words, if I can purchase Krishna, it takes, in other words, Krishna has to really understand our loving intention, that he is our Lord and Master. Whether he embraces us or leaves us brokenhearted by not being present before us, he's our worshipful Lord unconditionally. And so if that type of mentality is not there, Krishna doesn't open the heart. Krishna, that won't be given. And so these people they can never come close. And Prabhupada gives examples, like trying to understand the taste of honey by licking the outside of the jar. Unless somebody spilled something on the outside of the jar, like I usually do, but that's like a different thing. Krishna doesn't. He's got a perfect aim when it comes to honey. And so, you know, you'll never know, if you're just licking the outside of the jar, you'll never know what the honey tastes like. So we have to go beyond that. It's necessary for us all to mold our life in such a way that we can always have Krishna present in our heart and communing with Krishna through this devotional sentiment, through this loving and giving sentiment. Anything else from all the esteemed Vaishnavas? Nancy Dodd, is that the
Yes.
Bridal gown Nancy?
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Nancy. I thought your last name was Dodds. I just didn't want to.
Yes.
Do you have some takeaway, some reflections from the verses? No force, just inquiring.
Oh yeah, I really I love studying the nuances of worship versus relationship, and understanding that, you know, in relationship it becomes spontaneous, and it becomes like you become saturated with it, and it embodies everything you do. And you know, the store that I run, we run it in the attitude of trying to show every one of our customers what love is. We really don't run it on a business model, and it disturbs my bankers. But I just carry on no matter what they say. But, you know, so we just, and I've seen the effect of this, and it's amazing to me. It's amazing the power that that it has. And I don't know, I just that relationship and that, you know, being spontaneous, and that like you're breathing and speaking every moment is about Krishna. And you know, and every person that you come in contact to, you plant a little seed, you know, just like George Harrison is still doing today. You know, he's planting little seeds with those lyrics that are so beautiful in his music. And that's that relationship, you know. It's so this is, I really appreciate this, and I love this topic. It's so important to distinguish between, because for me sometimes worship is laced with duty and obligation, and it, you know, and what is it that moves us into that realm where it's spontaneous and love, and it's you know, the embodiment of your being. And I love this topic, so I'm so happy that you were speaking of it today. So yeah,
It's
beautiful.
Nice, real nice reflection there. And how that, like you say, it turns into spontaneousness comes out. Yeah. Without that, it can't happen. It can't happen.
Right. And the more, I think the more you experience, you know, these small little experiences of Krishna's love, the more you want it. And, you know, it just becomes like this unquenchable thirst that, and, you know, then, you know, this duty and obligation, it, you know, it's not quite enough, is it? You know, it's not quite enough. So
duty and obligation may be there, but when the duty and obligation is enhanced by with a loving relationship, just like I was mentioning this to somebody the other day, that when we all know the Kartik Damodar prayers, and when, I don't know if it was this group or whatever who I was speaking to, but when Mother Yashoda when Mother Yashoda picked up baby Krishna, she was boiling milk, and baby Krishna started to cry. She picked him up and was nursing him, and so that was spontaneous, you know, like save. In other words, based on love. And then then when the milk is boiling over, she puts Krishna down. And the acharyas say she doesn't put Krishna down in a neglectful way. She puts Krishna down in a servitor way, because that's Krishna's milk on the stove that's boiling over. And in order to make sure that it's not like, what do you call it, burnt or unkept, she runs over there to serve. In other words, the whole thing is Krishna. A lot of times we miss that she's actually going for service, more service to Krishna, not away from service to Krishna, but to another service to Krishna.
So a different mood.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
So we're at 9:30 in Nanteshwar, and it looks like Ronnie's digging up coconuts and mangoes in Hawaii.
Trying to get a comfortable spot to sleep. So she's also like, it's
Panchagoda used to tell me, Mars, you're like a dog, you know? Because on the summer trip, I had like 30 boys or 25 boys, whatever it is, and I wouldn't go to sleep until I knew where each and every single person was, and each and every single thing was in its place, and I'd be going around and around the circle. I said, why don't you just lay down? You're like a dog going around in the circle, trying to find a place to sit down. I said, I can't do it until I know, I can't be peaceful until I know the boys are properly situated. I can't. Sound like a dog. Govinda Maharaj says dog, D-A-W-G, dog.
That sounds like the Mother Yashoda story. You know?
Yeah. Some people said I was like that, you know. Some people didn't like that. Some people say I was like Goddess Kali, but some people with a different trident in each hand. So Nanteshwar, thank you for hosting again.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And hopefully we'll see you all next
week.
Tuesday.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Bo.
Thank you.
Hare Bo, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.